Welcome to the SBI Podcast, offering CEOs, sales and marketing leaders ideas to make the number.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. This is Greg Alexander, CEO of SBI, a B2B sales and marketing consulting company dedicated to helping you make your number. You are listening to the weekly SBI podcast series. And today I have a great guest joining me on the show. Keith Cox is the Vice President of American Sales for UPS Capital, a UPS company focused on providing finance and insurance to businesses with physical supply chains. This means helping companies with things like insuring goods in transit anywhere in the world, insuring hard-to-value items and time-sensitive goods, and providing the operating capital against goods warehoused abroad. Keith has been with UPS for 25 years, coming up through the ranks, so to speak, doing everything from sales rep, manager, director, and now senior executive. In his current role, Keith runs sales for the U.S., Canada, and Latin America. So, Keith, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Greg. Thanks for the invite, and super excited to be here.
Okay, great. All right, so today we are going to ask Keith to place his sales team at UPS Capital on SBI's revenue growth maturity model. So what is SBI's revenue growth maturity model, and why should you want to listen to Keith's application? So our revenue growth maturity model is a tool sales leaders use to see if they are going to make their number, and it has 5 stages, which we're going to go through today. And as a sales team moves up from level 1 to level 5, 2 fantastic things happen. First, the chances of making your number increase, and 2, the effort to do so decreases. So I'm going to walk Keith through the model and ask him to attempt to self-assess himself during this interview. And the benefit to you all listening is you're going to get to see a demo, so to speak, on how you might use this tool. And at the end of this exercise, if you want to use the revenue growth maturity model yourself, I will let you know how to get it. So Keith, thanks for being our lab rat today. Are you ready to go?
Absolutely.
All right, very good. All right, so let's start with level 1, which is called chaos. And here's a quick definition. So level 1 organizations have a corporate strategy developed by the CEO, but they don't have a corresponding sales strategy that aligns with it. And sales teams at level 1 tend to overcommit and underdeliver. They make the numbers sometimes, but not consistently. And when they do, it is not by executing a strategy, but simply because a few superstar sales reps exert some heroic efforts. And there is lots of fighting between sales and the marketing team and the product group and the finance team. So this is the chaotic state of level 1. So Keith, I know the answer to this, but I don't want to lead the witness, but we've had the pleasure of being associated with you guys. So let me ask you, does this describe your sales team?
I could say, thank God, no, it does not.
Yeah, I didn't think it did, but unfortunately we have some sales organizations that fall into that category, and it's painful. So, all right, let's move on to level 2, and I think things will start getting more interesting as we go through this. So level 2 is known as defined. And a summary of this level is as follows. So the corporate team and the functional strategies exist, but they're collecting dust and they're not being used. So we have lots of strategy documents. They're usually created as an executive team during the annual planning process. However, they are usually created separately from one another. And as a result, they are typically not used by team members below the executive level. So, for example, the sales team might not be aware of which campaigns the marketing team is going to run or is currently running, when they're going to run, and to which accounts. So examples like this one result in missed opportunities. So about 1/3 of sales organizations, at least according to our data, fall into this category. So Keith, what are your thoughts on this? Does your team at UPS Capital fall into this category?
You know, I would say at one time we definitely bridged that category. Currently we do not. And in other places that I've been in my career through UPS, no doubt, we have ventured into that space, and it, as you brought up everything that you described. And some other items, of course, come into there because when you're in that mode, I think also you create, churn in your sales force and churn in your sales leadership ranks as well.
Mm-hmm. So if you were in parts of UPS that maybe were in level 2 in the past, how did you get out of it?
Yeah, it comes back to some basics, which is reminding everybody that communication is key. And we have to be able to communicate, the strategy and the vision and making sure that we're all connected. And, I think also there are times, and I express this with my leadership team, I fully expect us to disagree. Because if we're all in an agreement, with the strategy that somebody comes up with, I don't know that that's the most healthy place to be either. So we should disagree. We should work through those collaboratively and come together as a team where we need to be. But when we roll out, to the market for the benefit of our customers, we have to be aligned. And when we're doing things to help our customers in their journey, then of course that's going to connect, to our strategy, or our strategy connects to their strategy, and we're all in this together. So it just comes back, what I've always seen over and over, time and time again, Greg, is, the communication factor. And respectfully, when people take their ball and go home, that just doesn't play out well for anybody.
I had a client tell me the other day, we were talking about the annual strategic planning process, which a lot of people are in as we're in the second half of the year here, that the strategy document itself is not very useful. It's kind of a commodity, but the strategic planning process where this disagreement that you just mentioned takes place, that's where, a lot of the value is created. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think part of it also has to be of the culture of the organization, that you almost want to celebrate, disagreements, because I think there's times from the culture of organization, especially in the sales and marketing side, where, you definitely have people who have knowledge and strengths, but for whatever reason they've decided not to share some insight that they have that, could really keep the wheels from falling off, of how you go to market and what you're going to do. And if they would feel safe to express that in the right environment, then it works out well, again, for the organization and the customers.
Mm-hmm. Question for you on culture. UPS was one of the most successful private companies for a long time, and now you're one of the most successful public companies. Did the culture change when you went from private to public?
I wouldn't say it's changed. No doubt we've had to, adjust and understand a little bit different dynamics and what is expected of being a public company versus a privately held company. But, I think also what has kept us successful as being private is sticking to, many of our core cultures and values that made us a successful company as a whole, whether private or public.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I've seen that event, so to speak, change companies' culture, so I'm glad it's not changing yours. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back from the break, we're going to jump into level 3 of our revenue growth maturity model.
Each day, you receive hundreds of emails, tons of text messages, countless telephone calls, and sit in too many meetings. How do you find ideas to make the number with all this noise? The SBI blog filters all this nonsense for you and presents only first-rate ideas to make the number. Simplify your life. Subscribe to one blog and read the best content. Go to salesbenchmarkindex.com and subscribe today.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. This is Greg Alexander, CEO and co-founder of SBI, a B2B sales and marketing consulting company committed to helping you make the number. This is the SBI Weekly Podcast Series, and today I'm joined by Keith Cox of UPS Capital, and we're discussing how to use SBI's revenue growth maturity model during the annual strategic planning process, and Keith is being kind enough to let me kind of walk him through it, and he's self-assessing himself on the fly, and he's acting as our lab rat today so we can all benefit from this and see how we might use this tool. So let's dive into level 3, which is called implemented. So here's a brief description on this. So the CEO's strategy has been translated to a sales strategy, and it is being used by the sales team daily. It is, quote, fully implemented. And each of the sales leaders' peers have fully implemented their functional strategies. And this is the difference between level 2 and level 3. Strategies exist and they are implemented. And the result of this is that success can be repeated. Leaders can point to real behavior change as a result of the strategy execution. So, for example, we had a client whose CEO decided to enter a new market, and the sales leader modified his sales strategy to make this happen, to include changing the headcount plan, the hiring profiles. He came up with a new quota and compensation system, changed the way that they built territories. They went from top down to bottoms up, etc. So, Keith, does this describe your team?
You know, Greg, this is almost surreal because at 2 o'clock today, I'm going down this path with my team for a couple hours, and because we've got a lot of changes going on at UPS Capital and UPS, and to your point, you know, we're heading into the back half of the year, and we're starting to make sure we're prepared for the back half of the year, but also setting us up to be successful in 2016. And that's exactly where we're at. So, you know, we're taking the strategy from the senior leadership team and our CEO, and now, you know, how do we take that and apply it to how we want to go to market? So, you know, with my marketing counterpart, putting that strategy together, and then all the way down what you're just saying, you know, we're redeploying some certain segmentation places, how we want to get to customers, you know, what's driving that is how customers continue to change in the market and how they want to buy. So we have to align ourselves to that. You know, it's a couple of both, right? I think as an organization, you end up having a strategy, but you know, the one thing that's not in the room with you when you're developing strategy is the customer.
Yeah.
And you know, so how do we make sure we pull that in, even at that point when we're thinking about how do we do that, make sure it's represented well, so that as we enter the phase that we're entering right now, which definitely is phase 3 for us. Well, I said we're rolling it out, or we're putting it on paper to share with everybody today. Again, it's been shared organically, you know, because I've always believed in getting it from the field, what needs to be happening, what will work best, or we think will, and get input. And now that it's all been collected, you know, now we're putting it out starting today to say, hey, this is where we're going. These are the steps we're going to take to get there, so that we finish out the year strong, and then we're ready for 16.
Mm-hmm. You know, the challenge here, and we see a lot of organizations struggle when they try to go from level 2 defined to level 3 implemented. And here's where the struggle happens. And it sounds like you're not struggling with this, so I wanted to ask your opinion on this. So you have a CEO who sets his strategy, and then that strategy gets communicated to the functional leaders of the CEO. So the sales leader, the marketing leader, the finance leader, et cetera. And then each of those functional leaders have to come up with their own functional strategies that align with the CEO strategy. Otherwise, you know, activities can cancel each other out. We don't want to be rowing in the same direction, so to speak.
Right.
But then you got to take it, like, so in your case as the sales leader, you then need to take it to your VPs, your directors, your managers, your reps, and ultimately to the customer. And message distortion happens as it cascades through the organization. And that's where people stumble. So have you guys experienced any message distortion? If so, have you overcome it, or is that something you're still struggling with? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. If somebody says they've never experienced it, I would question that. So absolutely, I've experienced it in the past, and you know what we're really working on to try to keep that from happening. And it's funny, message distortion. Actually, as I prepared for what I'm going to be taking the team through later today, you know, I went back to some of the other stuff I've used in the past or have seen lately, you know, which is VUCA, and you know, which gets right into message distortion. And I think what we are recognizing at UPS Capital is I've got a wide range of where people are in the seniority of their career path, and how all of them want information and is different. And so we really spend a lot of time last 6 months to a year around our communication strategy, specifically internal. And what media do we use, how often we use that media, so everything from voice to, what I'll take them through today, then I'll do a video recording of it as well that will be posted on our internal communication site for the sales and marketing teams, down to print. And even as simply as our internal communications that is in print, looks and feels like you're flipping a newspaper, right? Because probably people in my demographic means, still like to flip paper. But, so that's the piece that we really, because you can put you can lay all these great strategies out, but I think you summed it up well. If the message is distorted, all that work is for naught.
Yeah, no question. When I first started SBI, the thing to do was to publish a book, and I'm holding up the first book we published right now called Top Grading for Sales. And, back then people read physical copies of books. And then as time moved on, we got into blogging because people wanted their information in kind of bite-sized chunks. And we offer a blog every day that can be read in 5 minutes or less on your mobile device.
Yep.
Today we're doing a podcast, which is audio content because people are now walking around with these smartphones and they're listening more than they're reading.
Absolutely.
And now we also have SBI TV, right? Because people want to watch as well. So it's interesting that we're experiencing the same thing you guys are. You mentioned something. Did you say VUCA?
VUCA.
VUCA. What is that?
Yeah. So it's volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. It actually comes from the military.
And how is it applied? Like, what's its purpose?
So, volatility is all around the speed and dynamics of change in the market today. I think a lot of us always want things to be predictable, have a path, have a certainty of how you're going to go there. But, at the end of the day, like everything you just rattled off, all that has occurred just in the last, I would say in the last, 5 years.
Yep.
You've seen major shifts. And so, that creates volatility. The speed that things have to change for some folks, they see it as volatility. Uncertainty then becomes the lack of predictability, right? So people, don't want to be surprised. The sense of awareness and understanding, their surrounding issues and events. And of course, complexity, I think, as things happen faster, it's going to add to complexity. And, and you have multiple forces that are affecting all of this, contributing issues. You have, for me, I always try to take things and put them in real easy terms. And complexity for me is kind of like a big water balloon. You squeeze on one side, and then it just ends up moving to the, you still have the issue. It just landed somewhere else, right? And then, I think ambiguity is the biggest one when you talk about message distortion, and it's, the haziness of what's in front of us, right? You can't see through the fog, and then it allows that message distortion, or what we say misreads, and then becomes mixed meanings of the conditions, and then you have this whole cause and effect confusion that ends up happening.
Yeah, that's an interesting approach. If you think about it, going from point A to point B, so the executive team comes up with a strategy, and you want to get it implemented and executed all the way out to the customer. So point A is strategy creation. Point B is strategy execution. Everybody usually has great clarity around those two things, but moving in between those two things is this giant, foggy, gray cloud. And that ambiguity, as you say, is what causes uneasiness, and that's what makes people resistant to change.
Yep. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to level 4, which is called managed. So at this level, we have the corporate strategy and the functional strategies are defined, aligned, and implemented. The sales, marketing, product, finance, and HR team are operating in harmony, each taking action daily to accomplish each other's objectives. Problems are spotted before they happen because forward-looking KPIs are monitored consistently. Friction does not exist between departments, and the only remaining issue is the team is not aligned externally with the market as well as they could be, but internally they're in complete alignment. Customers and prospects' needs are changing rapidly, and the internal team might not be anticipating them as, in responding as quickly as we want. So there's a small number of organizations that reach level 4. Now, it's worth it because when they do, their performance is quite a bit greater than those at level 3. Keith, have you gotten to level 4 yet?
I would say, before, we've been there in the past, and you're right. It's a great feeling. And then, we've taken a step back in order for us to align ourselves with the market and dynamics that have changed. I've been part of that. I think probably a lot of people have been part of 1, 2, 3, and 4 so far. But no doubt I haven't spent that much time in 4. But when I have been in there, it's a great feeling because you're able to pretty much focus, as a sales leader and your sales team, 90 to 95% of the time is spent, you are aligned with the customer and their journey and where they're trying to go, and you actually also get to spend your time coaching in the sales teams instead of managing.
Yeah.
And it's a very unique dynamic, yes.
Coaching's a lot more fun than managing, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So, it's hard to be in level 4 because, the distinction of level 4 is that you're in alignment with the external market. Well, as you just mentioned to us, as you walked us through that military term, the rate of change that's happening in the external market is so fast these days, and it seems to be accelerating. So that requires like this new, level of responsiveness inside of companies. And when you're in a big company like yours, UPS Capital and even UPS, the parent company, that's like trying to move the Titanic. So have you guys done anything deliberately to try to increase speed?
Yeah, it is interesting you bring that up, and you're right. It's being able to be nimble, and I always use the analogy. I think that the great dynamics we have that UPS has set up with the UPS being, the large organization that it is, and no doubt, I think for any large organization, change or pivot can be somewhat of a challenge. But when you also have business units like UPS Capital, and UPS has many business units, that is what creates the nimbleness and the ability to pivot for customers, especially in specialty programs. When you think of the things you mentioned about UPS Capital to help customers finance and protect their risk. So we stay very focused on the core values of UPS, but we also stay very close to, what are the dynamics, who is entering the space, understanding that the customer themselves can be the competition, I think is probably the biggest shift that we see in our space, and how do we, again, continue to align with the customer and help them, realize that we can help them win in their space. And I think when you stay connected to the customer, you're going to help them win in their space, it helps you stay nimble.
Mm-hmm. You said something there that was really interesting, which is, when a company gets to a certain scale, this is the reason why business unit structure makes sense. That's what increases the agility. So, UPS Capital is able to be more responsive to its customers and prospects and employees because it's a business unit. And,
right.
The decision-making and autonomy has been pushed to the business unit level versus just being, another function inside of the mothership, so to speak. So that's another interesting way to do it. All right, we're going to take another short break. When we return, we're going to discuss what it means to be level 5, which is really great but really hard. If you're enjoying the SBI podcast today, you're going to love SBI TV. If you're not familiar with SBI TV, here's some information on it. You are watching SBI TV. This is a monthly web TV show featuring guests just like you, executives trying to grow their revenues. Each month, you can peek behind the scenes and watch your peers discuss their strategies for how they make their numbers. You are not going to want to miss this. Okay, welcome back, everybody. This is Greg Alexander, CEO of SBI. Today I'm joined by Keith Cox, Head of Sales at UPS Capital for the Americas, Canada, and Latin America. And Keith is walking us through his own on-the-spot, non-rehearsed self-assessment on where he sits on SBI's revenue growth maturity model. And up to this point, we've gotten through level 1 through level 4. And we've learned some very interesting things from Keith and his team at UPS Capital. We're now going to dive into level 5. So this level is called predictable. And let me describe this a little bit. So at this level, we have defined, aligned, and implemented strategies up and down the organization that dynamically adjust to changing market conditions proactively. That's the key term. Emerging best practices instead of best practices are identified, embraced, and implemented much faster than the competition. There is very little time working on internal improvement initiatives, and lots of time is spent focused on external market-facing activities. So think of this as utopia. Our analysis, and again, this is just our view of the world, is that only 9% of the companies that we've dealt with or have participated in our research studies have gotten to level 5. So Keith, what are your thoughts on level 5? Are you guys there? Are you on your path to getting there? What are the obstacles to getting there, et cetera?
Yeah, no doubt based on what we've discussed so far, we're not there. And, man, it would be nice to be there, no doubt. And I think one of the things I always stick to, hope is not a strategy. So you can't hope yourself to be there. So you have to, everything you're laying out and what we discussed so far today, and things that we've worked with SBI in the past on, where in some of the previous levels, getting the right people on the bus, making sure you're hiring the A players, how do you segment, how do you go to market? I think all those things have to build on one another. On top, within what is a strategy and what you're looking to do and accomplish with your customers. And you mentioned a couple things in there around, not doing best practices, but you're actually the one, I guess, and I don't know, can't remember the exact word you used, but you're inventing the best practices.
Emerging best practices, yes.
Yes, emerging best practices. I guess that would be utopia for me. I think I do struggle with that sometimes because I know we talk sometimes, hey, what is best practice? And I'm like, but I'm not looking to be like everybody else, right? So how do we get in front of this? How do we, and I'm definitely going to key that phrase, emerging best practices. I think you have to, some of the things we talked about, one of the things we try to also hold close at UPS Capital is innovation. And, we have teams, while we don't have a group that does nothing but innovate, we definitely take individuals that we realize they have strengths around, being able to think innovatively and think of new ideas and think about, how do we continue to push the envelope around taking any of our existing products and, coupling them in different ways and or what is the next solution that's out there. And I think that's the other big piece to what you mentioned. If you're going to be emerging best practices, but you're also going to be proactive and be in front of the market trends, well, then I would have to say you have to be one of them driving the market trends. And you're going to have to do that through innovation as well.
I think you're not giving yourself enough credit. I think your company and you personally, when we first got engaged with you, I think it was 2 jobs ago, and now you're the senior executive leading the entire team. And I think the reason for that, Keith, or one of the reasons for that, is that you've been proactive, not reactive, and you're open to new ideas. One example of that is your mention of this military framework applied uniquely to commercial operations. That's an example of identifying something in another field, porting it into your field, and getting value from it. And that's usually where the emerging best practice come from. Someone once said, nothing is new. It's just, how do you apply it, right? So there's all these theories out there, and how do you apply it to your situation?
Great points.
All right, we're going to take one more break, and when we come back, Keith and I will discuss what to do next after listening to this podcast to try to get yourself to a level 5 team. If you liked listening to Keith and want to access more peer-driven best practices, you should subscribe to the SBI magazine. Because in the magazine, and I'm holding it up right now, we profile people like Keith and his peers, and very often there's emerging best practices right in the magazine. So stick around after the break, and we'll be back in a sec.
Making your number is hard. Your problems are complex. Complex problems need complex solutions. Introducing the SBI magazine. Read in-depth stories written by award-winning journalists about how your peers have overcome their problems to make the numbers. When you need more than a tweet, social post, or blog article, turn to the SBI magazine. Go to salesbenchmarkindex.com to subscribe.
Okay. Welcome back, everybody. This is Greg Alexander, CEO and co-founder of SBI, a B2B sales and marketing consulting company dedicated to helping you make your number. Today, I'm on the line with Keith Cox, head of sales at UPS Capital for the Americas region. And we just walked ourselves through SBI's revenue growth maturity model. And Keith was kind enough to place himself on that model and self-assess himself in a very self-aware way, I might add. And I think we now understand the model, level 1 to level 5, and it doesn't take a genius to understand we all want to be at level 5. So the question is, how do we get there? So what does this all mean to the audience? So on average, level 5 organizations acquire customers 26% easier than level 1 organizations. And in addition, level 5 organizations generate about 31% more revenue than level 1 organizations do. Now you might be asking where I came up with those numbers. Well, SBI stands for Sales Benchmark Index. And for the better part of a decade, we've been collecting data like this and codifying and crunching it. We've got a database of about 11,000 companies with all kinds of metrics and best practices in it. And that's our statistical analysis. So there's quite a benefit of going from level 1 to level 5. So that's why you should care. Keith, if I was to put you on the spot here and ask you to speak directly to the audience and say, now that you've gone through this model with us and you've self-assessed yourself, and I think you're oscillating between the high end of level 3 and the low end of level 4, and it sounds like maybe that's why you're delivering outstanding results, and you have an action plan here, which literally you're going into a meeting today at 2 o'clock to implement to get into the end of level 4, maybe even to level 5. If you were somebody listening to this and you're going to do 2 or 3 things right after this podcast to try to go from one level to the next, what would it be?
I think the couple of first things that I would do is if I recognize that I don't have the wherewithal within myself to go through this, then I surround myself with people who can help me get through it. I think that's the first thing. And I don't mean that necessarily would be internally, as I've helped some of my peers, actually some of the peers that, your team has introduced me to, I've leaned on them, and of course your team as well. I think that's number one, is you can't go at these things alone and do things in a vacuum. I think that's the biggest piece. And maybe that's also part of one thing that I've always, me personally, and hopefully, sharing with my peers, is I'm not afraid to ask for help when I don't have the answer. And even sometimes when I have the answer, I'm not, always 100% convinced that it's the right answer. I will take input and think those things through. But once you get through that and you make a decision, then you've got to own that decision, and go at it with a sense of execution and conviction and confidence that, allows the organization to see that, feel it, and breathe it, which then is going to transpire, through the entire organization, and then also ultimately that's going to help our customers as well.
Let me probe on the first thing that you said a little bit, which is seeking help. And I commented earlier and complimented you on your self-awareness. Sometimes when I deal with executives like yourself, especially those that have had 25-year success track record with the same company like you have, they're a little reluctant to receive help from anybody, from their internal peers to their external peers to advisor companies like ours or, the dozens of others advisory companies. And, it just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why they're so defensive. So you've been open-minded. Is that just part of who you are, personality-wise? Is that based on how you were raised? Or did you have like some type of cataclysmic event in your career that made you realize that was important?
No doubt. Philosophy, I believe that you are a product of your environment. So I think a big part of it has to do with, how you're raised and where you come from and what you've been associated with throughout your life. But I will tell you, Greg, I've sat on the other side of those people, right? Or I've sat next to them, and I watch what has happened. And I don't mean to the individual, to neither the organization. And I always come back to it. The one thing that keeps me grounded is nobody, including myself, is for me is ever going to wear the crown or be the king. That's the customer. And so when we look at everything, that is my responsibility at UPS Capital. And our CEO reminds me of that. Not that he has to, but he definitely is always. You are the voice of the customer for us. And we always need the voice of the customer, at the table. And I also recognize that I think as you rise in organizations, my biggest fear has always been losing touch of that voice. Yeah,
because you get further away, right?
Right, further and further away. How I stay connected, the one easy one is to get out there and be in front of customers. But, of course, also that has its advantages and disadvantages, but I think that still is always part of it. And also time, time is definitely always something we have to manage at this level. The other piece is I definitely stay connected with members of the sales force and sales leadership that I know, don't give me the polite or the yes information, right? They're comfortable to tell me what is going on with our customers and what's happening, in the network. But and I think as a skilled leader, you have to be able to take that information and then use it, in the right way so that it doesn't come across as detrimental to the people that are sharing it with you and or detrimental to the organization.
Yeah.
It's information, and as we all know in sales, you manage your information skillfully, but you have to continue to acquire information and continue to develop and hone and think about what's happening.
Mm-hmm. And the people that give you bad news, which are the people that you want to have that relationship with, if they give it to you and then you turn it around and use it against them, they're going to stop giving it to you, right? So that's
Absolutely.
The skill of the leader, yeah. All right, I'm going to offer two resources to the audience here, and then we're going to wrap this up. So if you want to get a copy of our revenue growth maturity model and instructions on how to use it, download a copy of this year's research report, which is hot off the press, called How to Make Your Number in 2016. And here's how to get it. www.salesbenchmarkindex.com/2016-2016-report. And I'm holding up a copy of it right now. Very proud of it this year. It is filled with emerging best practices. So if you want to be one of these proactive leaders, grab a copy of that. Okay, the second thing I would point you towards is that if you feel you might not be a level 5 organization and want to be one, you can have one of our experts lead you through a workshop, which will detail for you how to become one. So go to www.salesbenchmarkindex.com/2016-workshop and request a workshop. So listen, on behalf of our audience and myself, Keith, I want to thank you for letting me put you on the spot here with this role play today. Our audience is benefited greatly from that. So thanks a bunch for being on the show.
No, thank you, Greg. Actually, it's a two-way street, and I've benefited a bunch from it as well, and I have appreciated the work we've done together as two organizations in the past, and look forward to all of our successes going forward.
Great. I just want to thank the audience for tuning in. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to have these types of conversations. That's what benchmarking is all about, the rapid sharing of best practices. So with that, I'm going to sign off and wish the audience best of luck as you try to make your number. Take care.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on SBI services, case studies, the SBI team and how we work, or to subscribe to our other offerings, please visit us at salesbenchmarkindex.com.